All right, let's go ahead and get started. Everyone, I'm Carolyn Hymas. I'm the Associate Director of Alumnus and Family Engagement, and I work on many professional development initiatives for our alumnus community. And I just want to thank all of you for joining us today for our talk, Grant Writing 101. And our guest speaker as well, Anjanette Maraya-Ramey. She's an alumna of the dance school and just has vast experience with fundraising and the nonprofit world. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, Anjanette. A couple of housekeeping items for everyone. We recommend that during the screen share, when Anjanette shares her presentation, you watch in speaker view, so it makes the slides larger. We also ask that you mute yourself during the presentation. We will have time for questions at the end. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to send them in the chat, and I will aggregate them all and share them at the end and moderate the chat with Anjanette. And also, the last thing I'm supposed to say is the talk is being recorded for just, I guess, your awareness of that. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Anjanette to begin.
Thanks, Carolyn. All right, so we have all the rules of engagement. I'm going to go ahead and share a PowerPoint with you. I will do my best to not be boring. I am a performing artist, so I will be interactive and animated as best as I can via Zoom. Okay, great. All right, so you're here for Grant Writing 101. Let's start with this here. Just a little bit about me, like who am I? I am Anjanette Maraya-Ramey. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a graduate of the dance school, class of 2004, BFA. I hope I'm not aging myself, but you can guess how old I am. I also have a master's in nonprofit management and leadership from the University of San Diego. I'm a dancer and choreographer, so I'm an independent artist. And I'm also a former executive director, development director, and grant writer for a variety of arts nonprofits in San Diego. And I also worked as a public funder for the City of San Diego Commission for Arts and Culture. So I've been on sort of both sides of the fence in terms of grant writing. I've been a receiver of funds, and I've also been a giver of funds. So that's a little bit about my grants background. I've also served as a volunteer grant panelist, which I recommend a lot of you do if this is your first time sort of getting your feet wet in the grants world. This is actually how I got my start. Before I even wrote my very first grant, I volunteered as a grant panelist for the City of San Diego Commission for Arts and Culture. And I also volunteer for the California Arts Council. I've done that for the past, I think, 8 to 10 years. And I go up to the state building, Sacramento, and I read, it could be up to 100 proposals from a variety of arts organizations throughout the state. And I serve on a panel to adjudicate them, rank and score them, and recommend them for funding. So if your city government, I'm assuming most of you are in Los Angeles, and you live in the state of California and you would be interested in applying to any of the local or regional or statewide funding, I would recommend that you look into these opportunities because you learn a lot from the process. That's sort of how I got my start into grant writing. I had to see how others did it first before I wanted to delve into doing it myself. And lastly, I'm the founder and CEO of my own C corporation called Maraya Performing Arts, which I founded at the cusp of the pandemic. I know I have incredible timing, but I started it in January 2020, and that's a C corporation. And all the teaching that I do for nonprofit consulting, any of the independent choreography I do under my own sole proprietorship. So I was just talking to Carolyn about the different business entities I have. It has not prevented me or precluded me from applying for any grants. I just kind of pick and choose what the funder is looking for. Are they funding individuals? Are they funding small businesses? Are they funding organizations? So I kind of pick. I've got my sole proprietorship, Anjanette Maraya-Ramey, individual artist and choreographer, teaching artist. And if they're funding individuals, I apply under that. If they're funding small businesses, I apply under Maraya Performing Arts, which is my C corporation. And if they're only funding 501c3s, nonprofit organizations, I do not have that, but I have a fiscal sponsor. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I didn't purposely, I've worked in the nonprofit field for about 15 years, and I purposely did not start a nonprofit because I know all the ins and outs and some of the headaches involved with becoming a nonprofit. And I chose not to do that because I really wanted to focus on the art and not the administrative side of that. So I have a fiscal agent that works with me if I want to apply for grants that require 501c3 or allows a fiscal sponsor. Because we have a lot of people in the room today, we have almost 50 people. I usually like to learn a little bit about you, but if you can put your names, your preferred pronouns, your artistic discipline, and your years you graduated from CalArts, and then maybe type in the chat, if you will, some of your learning objectives for today. What brought you here? Why would you sit in another Zoom for 2 hours? I'm just curious, like what made you crazy enough to do that? I'm sure there's other things you want to be doing today, but if you type in the chat, it will help me kind of gauge what I should be covering today. Just for today's purposes, because I really only have about an hour and 45 minutes, this is a broad stroke overview of grant writing. I'm trying to consolidate a lot of things in a short amount of time, but FYI, and this is like a shameless plug, I will be teaching a winter session in January. So this is just a little taste test sample of what's to come in January. All right, so I see in the chat, and I'll monitor those about 501c3s and finding operating expenses, which is not the most sexy thing that people or funders like to fund, but there is money. All right, okay, broad strokes. So we don't have the capacity to introduce ourselves because there's so many people in the room. I will just be looking at your lovely faces and screens and your names in the chat for some potential engagement. Rules of engagement: please respect each other's point of view. You're all on mute for now. Use the chat box for now for reactions. I like thumbs ups, applauses. Chat. I look in the chat occasionally to see your comments. You will receive a copy of the slides afterwards, but they are also in the chat as Carolyn has presented earlier. And we will have time at the end for questions. We'll just open the chat box and I'll answer it live rather than typing it back to you. Let's see. Be present. Be positive. I know COVID is challenging for all of us, but know that we're all in this together. And I want this to be a very nurturing and positive learning environment for everyone. All right, so let's get on with the nitty gritty. So grants research. Let's talk about what do you want to raise funds for? A lot of you, I don't know all your different walks of life, but some of you, I can see from the chat, are individual artists and or have your own nonprofit. So you have to be clear on what you're raising funds for. Are you funding an exhibition? Are you funding research to do a documentary? Are you funding a film project? Are you funding a project? Or are you funding general operations for your nonprofit organization? So you've got to be clear on that, okay? And then as you delve deep into your grants research, you want to be clear that you're not just like, blanket sharing like your same proposal to every funder you know of. Some funders, you have to be invited to apply. they're very, very specific because they have established relationships with individuals or organizations, and they ask, you've already kind of been pre-vetted, and it's sort of exclusive, like a VIP club or something. So you might have to be invited. So do not apply if you're not invited. And if it says invitation only, call the program manager on the website or whatever and ask how you get invited to apply. For some grants, there is a two-step process. Typically, for funders who have a big portfolio and a lot to give, and they don't want to just read a full proposal, make you waste all your time doing that. They look at a LOI, which is called a letter of interest, a letter of inquiry, something like that, which is usually like a one-pager that says, tell us what you would be interested in doing, or what you would want the funds for. Give us just like a quick snapshot. And then they sort of like vet those and go, this is good, this is good, this is good. We want a little bit more information about this organization or this individual. Let's invite them to apply and submit a full proposal. So you might need to go through a two-step process to just submit a full proposal. And then even if you submit a full proposal, there's a chance you don't get funded. It's kind of heartbreaking and it kind of sucks. It's really like going through a job interview. You know, like they screen your cover letter and your resume. Or like auditioning for the symphony, you might not make the first cut, and you might, get the call back, and they still might not hire you. So think of it like you are applying for a job, or you are auditioning for a play or a dance company or the symphony or something like that. I want you to think about, when you're doing your research, to be clear in your intentions and match them to the funder initiatives and guidelines. I've seen a lot of artists and nonprofit organizations, and it really bugs the crap out of me when they start to, I call it mission drift, so they can fit the grant guidelines. They're like, oh yeah, they're only funding like immigrant and refugees who are impacted by COVID, and they want to do research for a documentary film. And you can say like, well, I'm a child of an immigrant. Does that count? Let me like finagle my way to like make myself fit in the category. And I'll ask them to fund a dance film project that has nothing to do with, so I'm not going to mission drift and just make myself become what the funder is looking for. We're not like forcing it. It's like forcing yourself to be something that you're not. It's like dating or pretending to be somebody that, you are not. So don't do that, because you can get yourself into a big giant rabbit hole, and it is very hard to come out of that. I've seen organizations close because they have mission drifted so much, and then they're unrecognizable. And then nobody knows, like, wasn't that this organization that did like creative youth development? And all of a sudden they're doing like public art creative placemaking programs with adults. Like, what happened? What? I don't understand what's going on here. So do not mission drift and just be all over the place. Be very clear about your intentions, be very clear about what you need funding for, and be very clear about whether or not you match the funders' initiatives and guidelines. All right, moving on. Types of grant funders. Oh boy, there are just so many. I can't even. When I was writing this, I was just like, woo, here's where you go into sort of this is how I go into these rabbit holes. I'm just like a big, I don't know, once I dig, you just keep going. It's kind of like when you go on social media and you like find a friend. Oh, and then what are their mutual friends? And then who are the mutual friends of the mutual friends? It's kind of like you just open a can of worms. So this is sort of like when you do grant research, you just can go into a rabbit hole, but it's always a learning opportunity. I'm basing this, the type of grant funders, on the assumption that you are all in Los Angeles or in the Los Angeles area, but it could vary depending on if you don't live in Los Angeles. But this right here on the left-hand side, where I talk about city, county, I see North Carolina, state and federal, everybody has a city, right? Asheville, maybe the biggest city in North Carolina is Raleigh, or I don't know. You look at the city, the largest city municipality, and you look to see if they have a Department of Cultural Affairs or an Arts and Culture Commission or a Arts and Culture something. You can just Google them. But usually cities, like most large metropolitan cities, we're talking like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, even San Diego, have they have money, some more than others, but they have money for arts and culture specifically. And they could fund both individuals and or nonprofit organizations and or individuals who are doing projects under a fiscal sponsor. So these are sort of just a high level broad brushstroke of government grants. So you can go to your city, and I put the little website here. You can go to your county, which is then I'm just growing out bigger and bigger. So city, regional, county, larger. Then you go beyond that and you go state, and then you go national, you go federal. And here are some of just the art specific grants within government. There are more. You can go into like, let's say specifically like the county, I'm in county of San Diego. I could be like Chula Vista, which is a small city municipality within the county of San Diego. Or if you're in Los Angeles, you could be like city of Pasadena or city of, I don't know, Santa Ana or something like that, which is within the county of Los Angeles. So you can you can break this down on a micro level and just search. And you can just Google city of wherever you live, cultural affairs, arts and culture, whatever, and you'll come up with the grants. Yes, so Kathy is telling us Long Beach, Santa Monica, Pasadena have their own cultural divisions that make grants. So that's what I was saying, is that if you start with a city and you start to go down regionally, I do start to find that the smaller regional you go, the smaller dollar amounts they go. Yeah, cities usually give preferential treatment to its residents, but some cities, because I used to work for the city of San Diego, funded about 150 arts nonprofits at about $15 million. We had a criteria in our funding requirements that says, yes, you can live in the city of San Diego, but if you don't have a storefront or you don't have a office, maybe it's a PO box, it's your garage, and then you go around to schools or you go around to, parks and do your programs or whatever. If you are serving a majority of the residents that live in Long Beach, Santa Monica, Pasadena, you can say, while my post office box is in San Diego or my mom's home address is in that's where I get my mail. But that's not necessarily meaning that I'm not serving the constituents of Long Beach, Santa Monica, or Pasadena. So you can still make the case for, and we did that in the city of San Diego, because there were grantees who did not have a physical location, storefront, or mailing address that was in our jurisdiction. But they made the case and said, but we're serving city of San Diego residents or city of Chula Vista or city of whoever. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Why shouldn't we fund them? So you have to look, and then you call the program manager. These aren't robots looking at your grant proposals. They're actual human beings. So I always like to make a call, and I do not like to send blind proposals, meaning like you've not made any contact with anybody on the program side. So make a call, do an email, introduce yourself, so they start to look like, oh yeah, that person called me. They're from, the Pasadena Ballet or whatever, or they're an individual artist who's applying or something. So I always just call so that they start to look, because remember, I used to be in that position, and I know who called me. I know who sent me an email. I could be like, oh, this is the one. They don't live in Pasadena, but they serve Pasadena people. So I can make that clear to the grant panelists. and help them sort of like hone in on the fact that, you do in fact meet the requirements. Let's see what's going on here. All right. So we were at the types of grant funders. Here's all the different type of governments. Here are some things you need to consider when you apply to government funders. Are you a 501c3? Do you need to be a 501c3? Can you come in with a fiscal sponsor, fiscal agent? Does your fiscal agent let you apply for government grants? My C corporation, Mariah Performing Arts, I've applied. I've been only open for 10 months. And I've already received like 3 grants, and I am not a 501c3. Let me repeat, I am not a 501c3, but I've gotten United Artists Relief Campaign, I've gotten Cal Humanities, and I've gotten some individual donations without being a 501c3. So I looked into becoming fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas. If you look that up, fracturedatlas.org, you can become a member. It's about $10 per month for individuals. And you can apply to become a fiscally sponsored individual artist, a group, or whatever. But the thing about Fractured Atlas is that they do not let you apply for government grants. And I want to repeat this. People say grants and contracts, they are not really synonymous. Like the county and the city, all the government will say grants, but they are really contracts for services. Again, let me repeat. Government grants aren't really grants. They are contracts for services. And contracts for services, it's kind of like you're entering into an agreement. You're saying, oh, okay, City of Los Angeles, you're hiring me, Anjanette Maraya-Ramey, to provide arts and culture services to the constituents of City of Los Angeles. Okay, so I'm going to do 52 after-school dance classes at the Boys and Girls Club in LA. Give me a contract for $50,000 and I will do that for you. So the contract, I now get married to the city or whatever of Los Angeles. I enter into a contract agreement. I perform the service. I front everything from like whatever. If I need a boombox, sorry, a speaker or like music or whatever, I have to front all the costs. And then I go back to the city of Los Angeles and say, can you reimburse me for that money that I fronted? So because we're in a contract rather than a grant is where they just give you the $50,000 up front and go have fun, go teach the classes, and I have all the money up front. That is a grant. A lot of government funders do not do that. That you have to enter into a marriage for a year or 2 years or whatever, a contract agreement where you are going to provide the services up front, meaning you need to have cash. This is the part I do not like. You have to have usually a 3-to-1 or 2-to-1 cash matching requirement that I have to pay myself, my teaching artists or whatever it is. Maybe I have to rent a space or I need to pay gas mileage and tolls and all this stuff. I got to front that. And then I got to show my receipts. I got to show my receipts to the county and submit them and wait sometimes 30 to 60 days for them to pay me back. And sometimes they're like, well, we don't fund you unless you have 2 or 3 years or 1 year of operating history. I'm only 10 months old, so I don't qualify already. Like, that's not a good match. I don't have all the funds to I don't have a 3-to-1 cash match. I can't do that. I can't wait 36, my cash flow. I can't wait 30, 60 days to get into a contract and wait for them to pay me back. I can't do that. So it's probably not a good match for me to apply for that right away. But for established nonprofits or 501c3s, I would go for this. And if you're an individual and you're fiscally sponsored on a Fractured Atlas, remember, they don't let you do, because they're not going to front the money for you. Fractured Atlas is only good as a fiscal sponsor if you have like individual donors or non-governmental foundations or big major donors wanting to pass through. So they're more as a pass through, like they're like a bank. They're gonna like hold your money at the Bank of Fractured Atlas. So the donor gives the money to the Bank of Fractured Atlas, and then Fractured Atlas takes a little cut, maybe it's 10%, and then they will give you the rest of the funds, and then write your donor their tax ID letter. So Fractured Atlas is more of a pass through. Let's see, reimbursement basis, beware of that. And then also with all the government, trust me, it is not cute and it is not fun. You have to show proof of all these things and maintain them. Registrations with the Attorney General, Secretary of State, you have a DUNS number, you have sam.gov. It's just like, bleh, it's just a lot. Fiscal sponsor, just for clarification, is like a umbrella organization. So for example, I am Mariah Performing Arts. I am a C corporation. I am a for-profit entity. I am not eligible to apply for government funds because I have to be a 501c3. Most of them require you to be a 501c3. So I have to go, Bonita Historical Museum, you're a 501c3, will you be my umbrella? Will you be the receiver of the funds from the government? And will you show them we can match those funds? And will you show them your Attorney General, Secretary of State? Can you, show me their sam.gov? You do all the dirty work so I can just do the art. And I need you to do all the administration. Like I need you to submit the receipts. I need you to collect the money. I need you to do all that. And if I get a $50,000 grant from whatever city of Los Angeles, and our agreement is that you're going to take a 10% administrative fee, then I get $45,000 from the Bonita Museum. So city of Los Angeles gives the Bonita Museum $50,000. They do all the dirty work. Anjanette Maraya-Ramey makes the art, and I pay Bonita Museum to do all the dirty work. And then I get my 40 grand to just do art. I don't want to do all that paperwork and receipts and blah. It's too much stuff. So that's why I think it's a benefit to have a fiscal sponsor. I also think it's like less headache. And trust me, there are too many nonprofits. A lot of them are dormant. They're all volunteer run. It is so hard to run a nonprofit. I've run so many nonprofits. I've seen many nonprofits close. It is not fun. It's much more fun to just do your art and have a fiscal sponsor in which you have an agreement with. The only thing about fiscal sponsor is you have to find a fiscal sponsor who's not also applying for the same grant you are. So like Bonita Historical Society is my fiscal sponsor right now, but they might be applying for California Arts Council grants. So that might not be a good thing, but that's my like temporary Band-Aid frame right now, because I have donors, individual donors and bank donors who are like, we want to donate to you, Anjanette, but you don't have we need a tax write-off. So can you get the Bonita Museum to write the tax ID? So we've got that agreement in place. All right, so more funders, more. There's lots. Corporate funders are like, you just like go downtown, you just like look at the high-rise building, you're like, oh my God, there's Target, oh my God, there's SAP, oh there's Wells Fargo, or okay, those are corporations that have like big dollar bills, and like they have to, a lot of them are interested in corporate social responsibility and giving back to communities, so they have giving programs, or they have foundations that are sort of that community giving arm. Usually they fund to nonprofit organizations. I don't know that a lot of them like fiscal sponsors, fiscal agents. So this is more for if you have your own 501c3 that you would kind of apply under this. And then, sometimes what I like about banks or like corporate donors is they match donations. So you can have like a donor, an individual donor, give to your 501c3, and then ask your bank, if I can raise $5,000, would you match it 1-to-1, $5,000? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. Okay, you're a client or you're a 501c3 that does business banking with us. We're down. So that also incentivizes your donor that you've got skin in the game and that you can raise and match the funds. That's something I like about corporate funders. Foundations. There are community foundations, like in San Diego, we have Rancho Santa Fe Foundation. We've got the San Diego Foundation, Jewish Community Foundation, a lot of foundations. And what I call them are gatekeepers. They're basically like a bank to hold donor money. It's kind of like, what's that guy's name? Who's Facebook guy? The Facebook guy. I forgot his name. But anyways, he has his own foundation, or let's talk about Zuckerberg. Thank you. Mark Zuckerberg has the Zuckerberg Chang Foundation, but Zuckerberg Chang also gives to the, Palo Alto Community Foundation. Because Zuckerberg Chang, they're like, we don't know. We just want to, fund startups and like artists and homeless youth or whatever. But we don't know how to do a grants program or like give out the money. We need help from a foundation who knows how to re-grant and do all that stuff. So our foundation, the Zuckerberg Foundation, is going to give $50 million to the Palo Alto Community Foundation. And we're going to tell them we want to fund homeless youth, arts programs, soccer programs, whatever, and then let the community foundation re-grant those out. So the community foundation are like gatekeepers. They're like the bank for rich people and donor advised funds, right? Like if I'm like, oh my God, I have so much money. I don't know what to do with it. Like, let me just call my community foundation and like tell them like, I want a scholarship this to like first generation Filipina-Americans who are going to CalArts. Can you just like take care of that for me? Great. And then just tell me who you fund it to. So I would go, if I was a rich person, I might just go to community foundation and like dump my money there and let them take care of it. So if you're like hear of your community foundation in your local area, look them up because they will have grant programs there. Sign up to be on their newsletter because they will ping you when grants come out. We talked about corporate foundations can also be corporate funders. So corporate people like the Zuckerberg people could have their own foundation, but they can also put their foundation within a community foundation. So foundations get all like weird, just depends on where they want to put their money and who they want handling it. Usually they just don't want their company dealing with at all, or sometimes they just want the community foundation to deal with it. We also have the private family trust. You might see like the William and Hewlett Flora Foundation Trust, or the, somebody rich person's name trust. It can be somebody who's got a bequest and they don't have anybody to give a trust fund usually. And you can hit those people up for like maybe planned giving, like, hey, I see that you have all these assets and that you care a lot about my artwork. Would you consider donating a part of your trust, your assets, or your retirement funds to continue the legacy of my art that you care a lot about? So there could be private family. That's just a big long shot, but just know that you're there. Bottom line is that relationships equals love and money. Remember, these are people behind. It's like the Wizard of Oz. There is like a real person there. So it's not just the wizard going, ha, 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 you must see the wizard. Like there is real people reading your proposals, learning about your work, and that you have to build relationships. You can't just submit a grant and then never talk to these people again. You've got to, even if they decline you, invite them to your shows, send them zines, send them, a copy of a print or something in the mail, send them a Christmas card or a holiday card with a print of your artwork, invite them to watch your film or a snippet of your film. If you can't expect to just submit a piece of paper and then like just sit around and wait. you kind of have to be a little like social and like engage with people, because people give to people. Am I right? All right. So moving on, just check my time here. Like doing good. Okay. So here's another like rabbit hole that you can go down when you're, have a lot of free time. So grant makers, like I used to be a grant maker when I worked for the city of San Diego, and there's like the San Diego Foundation and the Rancho Santa Fe and the Claire Rose Foundation and all these like people who give away money, right? Philanthropists and whatever. There are networks of philanthropists. It's pretty crazy. Like I've been to these like networking events. It's like, oh my God, we all have this money to give away to people. Like, this is awesome. And we talk about best practices. How do we do equitable funding? How do we think about racial equity? How do we use more to help COVID relief? Like we get together as funders and grant makers and philanthropists, and we have networks and conglomerates. So there are probably somewhere you live, San Diego grant makers, Southern California grant makers, Northern, and then you can start to, I'm going to just show you how I start to stalk people. It's pretty fun. Like when you stalk people on like social media and you're like, oh my God, who do they know? And who do they know? And who do they know? So I go to like, so for example, San Diego, I live in San Diego, and I'm like, who are all those people who are in that special club of funders? And I want to know who's in that room. So I go to ours, which is, they just changed their name. They used to be called San Diego Grant Makers, but now they're called Catalyst of San Diego and Imperial Counties. And what I do is I look at their members, and then I invite myself to the table, and then I start to look, oh my God, who are these people? Are they, what do they do? What do they do? Then I start to look and I go, oh, look at Jewish Community Foundation. Oh, Bank of America. And then I start to then stalk their funders. And I start to look at their website. Look at these. Look, oh my God, look, JP Morgan. Wow, look at, there's so many. Look, I start to look at the Bernstein Fund. I start to stalk these people, Claire Rose, and I start to look at them and I go, ooh, McCarthy, what did they fund? Ooh, Moxie, what did they fund? Ooh, Satterberg, what did they fund? And this is where you start your research and you start going down the rabbit hole, and you want to make, it's like you're looking for your next partner in life. And you're like, ooh, do they have, a nice house? Or do they have, do they like visual art? Ooh, I like visual art. Okay. Burnham Fountain, you start to look. And then you start to, maybe you make you found somebody and you're like, I'm just, I've heard of them before. I heard of whatever. I know one. I heard of the Parker Foundation. So now I go into this thing called candid.org. I'll tell you about it in just a minute. So I go to candid.org and I start stalking even more. This is like an awesome place to look, because you can look at foundations, because foundations are also either 501c3s, C4s. They're nonprofits too, right? They just have to give away their money so they can have the tax write-off and do social good. But you can look at Foundation Directory online to look at people, but when you do Foundation Directory online to look for grants, sometimes you have to subscribe and it costs a lot of money. So I'm too cheap to pay for that. I just know I just look in other ways. I like, go to the grant makers, and then I go down the rabbit hole and I search the Parker found their members. So I just happen to know this. I know they're a member of San Diego Foundation. And then I also, when you go to shows or like museums or whatever, don't you look at the donor walls or like the programs? You're like, oh, who funded 100,000 or more? Like, oh, let me look at the donor wall or the exhibition wall or the flyers or the website. You start taking names, especially with people who sort of do what you do, or you do it better, or you have a little bit of a competitive advantage. So if you're a visual artist or you're a photographer, go look at your MOPA or go look at your museums and start stalking their funders. And you're like, whoa, I noticed that this Parker Foundation, they fund a lot of arts. What's up with that? I want to take a look. So I'm going to stalk them on GuideStar, which is under candid.org. I'm going to first look at their website, and then I'm going to look at their 990. So their 990 is their tax form. And you can see you make a free profile, doesn't cost you a thing, and then you look up their 990. I'm not going to log in right now, but you guys can do this for yourselves, and you start to look at who did they give money to and how much. Because you imagine when you're going to send your grant application, how do you know how much to ask for? If you're asking for $50,000, they don't have $50,000. They usually only give $5,000 or $2,000. And you're here looking like a fool asking for $50,000. You do not want to do that. So GuideStar, candid.org, and GuideStar, they all merged just recently. So you've got to create a profile and start just stalking. You can look at whoever you just look them up right here in search and look at their 990 tax forms and see who they funded. I'm just for right now going to go to the Parker Foundation, the website, and I will show you because they also have a history of their grantees. So I look at like, let's see, I thought I had this, who they've already granted. So I look at their financial summary and like, ooh, they got lots of money. Look at this, millions. So 50,000 is not like a big deal for them, right? I would also look in their, it's down here, sorry. It says like grant history. Where did it go? Historical summary. Look at visual. Ooh, they love visual arts. Match, ding, ding, ding. You know, ooh, they funded Lux Arts Institute, San Diego Art. They like visual arts. Look how much they funded the visual arts, 117,000. Ooh, look at all these big chunky numbers. I'm gonna hit them up, you know, and then I go look at their criteria and say, oh, okay, what makes me eligible? Do I hit all the criteria? So then I look at the criteria and I make sure that I fit the bill. But I look at this and I go, this is worth my while, because like a $5,000 grant from tiny little old me, or even 30,000. And this is one of the few funders who like to fund general operating. And what general operating is the non-sexy stuff. It is not like paint or like video film, you know, it's not like cameras or anything that directly relates to making the art. See how they fund the executive director position or a development director and a sound system. So they fund things that help you do your business. Because, you know, don't you want to pay yourself if you're like an executive director for your own nonprofit arts organization? Like, who's going to fund that salary? Lots of people won't. They'd be like, a lot of people say, do not use this for indirect or operating expense. Or if you ask for $50,000, only 10% of it can be used for indirect operational. Only 10%, $5,000. Wow, that sucks, you know. But Parker Foundation, you know, they're like, oh, you want the whole 50K to go to somebody's full-time salary? Awesome, right? Yeah, sound systems are sexy. And if you can ask for it, ask for it. But I would actually be more strategic and know if I can fund a salary, which I know is harder to get, and I can get a sound system from somebody else, I'm going to ask for a salary from Parker Foundation. And then I know other people will fund sexy sound systems. Because, you know, when funders, you think about a funder like, oh my God, I want the kids to have instruments. I want to buy the violins. I want to buy the markers and the paint. And I want to buy the, you know, notebooks and I want to fund that, you know, the canvas and I don't want to fund the executive directors. Ew, you know, nobody wants that. They want to feel good about, they want to see like, oh, look at the kids and the paint and like, look at this individual artist. We funded this artist, all his digital cameras and like all the memory cards, and we funded that. They don't want to say, we funded the executive director who wrote the grant so this photographer can have an exhibition. So I'm going to save my like non-sexy stuff for this funder, because there are very few funders that fund non-sexy things. There's a lot that want to fund sexy because they want to look sexy, so yeah, you just got to be super strategic about like who's going to fund what and like who I'm going to ask for what. Remember, we talked about who's the best match for you. So that's just one way of doing your stocking. Stocking, not stocking stuffers, but stocking, STALKING, like stock. I hate using that word, but it's like the best way I know to like do your research. You have to just go down this rabbit hole, and it can start from various launching points. Like maybe you started at the cultural affairs department, and then you signed up for their newsletter. And then your newsletter shows you, oh, here's more funders doing a call for artists, or more. Like I sign up for California Arts Council, and then I get their newsletter, and then there's more grants when I get their newsletter. And I just keep going. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so distracted. So what I like to do is I like to plan out for the year, sort of like a season, or like sort of map out, these are the 2 big projects I'm working on this year. I'm going to work on this dance film, and I'm going to work on this site-specific thing. Those 2 things. How much is this dance film going to cost? How much is this site-specific dance thing going to cost? And I just raise money for those 2 things. I know a lot of artists that get stuck in this rut. They just go, we just make up a project when we see a grant that looks cool. And I'm like, that's not sustainable. Like, why are you going to do that? Like they see a grant that's like, oh, local impact for artists that work with cultural artists or something, that work with BIPOC communities and are doing interactive engagement in low income poverty areas or something. I'm like, I do that. I'm going to do that. And it's like, you've never done that before. Why are you all of a sudden like mission drifting to fit the grant? Now, when it's something that you wanted to do, like your dance film, you got distracted because you applied for something that you never were going to really do or haven't done before. So just do you, stick to you. I just opened a few tabs so you can see like there is a lot, and these are in the slideshow as well. But for you LA peeps, look at the Department of Cultural Affairs, City of LA, County of LA. Here's the state, California Arts Council, and FYI, California Arts Council just opened up their grants. This is grant season right now. So this is prime time for y'all to be like stocking away. Like there's a lot, and they're funding individual artists. So like they don't really ever do that. But I know I've sat on that panel for like 8 years, and I've pushed. I'm like, you guys need to fund individual artists. You need to figure out a way to allow fiscal sponsors. So they're doing that. So check it out. Here's all the grant programs right now. It's really kind of fun to look at this. I mean, but here's general operating. Ooh, they don't even really do that as well, but they're doing it. Projects, fellowships. This is like a great place to start because they're funding both individuals and organizations. And then I just opened here's the NEA. So here's the federal one. This is for, they don't really fund individuals, but if you're an individual that can get hooked in with a nonprofit, go for it. And then here's all those membership organizations I talked about. Southern California, remember the VIP club with all the rich people? This is sort of their little conglomerates. And here's a couple for you guys who are, or for you all who are individual artists. I applied for this and I got this. Quick grants for Cal Humanities. They have $1,000 to $2,000. I think you do have to be a California resident for these, but they show you samples of funded grant proposals. So they let you cheat. They kind of give you the answers. So like all of this stuff is in here. You just have to read. They do project grants for $10,000 to $20,000. They do quick grants for individuals between 1 and 5. So that's pretty cool. And then LA has CCI, Center for Cultural Innovation, and you have quick grants here. I think they usually do a monthly $1,000 quick grants for individual artists. Yes, all the links I put in the PowerPoint, so you'll see. And if I just put the name, you can Google them. But I did my best to include all the links for you. There's a lot. This is like the part you're going to spend more time on research than you are actually writing the grant. And people think, oh, it takes time. Yes, it does take time to write the grant, but you've got to culminate and cull all the attachments and everything like that, make sure the research is done correctly before you even apply. So you've got to spend a lot of time on the research and make sure that you're applying for things that you're actually eligible for. So going back to this, finding the perfect match. Here's the candid.org that I told you about, Foundation Directory Online. Here's that website. Remember looking at the funders grantee list. You can look on their website, just like we did with the Parker Foundation. You can look at their 990 tax form. And little funny secret, if you ever want to know how much money people make, they have to list the top paid employees that make over $100,000. And I was like stalking just for fun, like looking at like, oh, let me look at such and such symphony or theater organization. I'm like, oh my God, they make $400,000 or whatever. So you can always like look in there and see like, oh my God, they're making big. So you can look at highest paid employees. You can look at who's on their board, because you might see, oh my God, I totally know Susie Q. Susie Q is on the Parker Foundation board. Susie Q was my babysitter when I grew up. So I'm going to call Susie Q and go, oh my God, remember me? You were my babysitter. I'm totally applying for a grant. Can you make sure to look out for my grant and like put in the good word for me? Or do you want to, do a site visit or something, or come by my studio and check out my work? There I am building a relationship. And you know how I found that out? I looked at their website, I looked at their 990, and I was doing a lot of stalking, and I found Susie Q was on their board. So do you see how like I've spent so much time just like researching it and trying to find my foot in? And again, looking at people's programs, donor walls, website, you just have to be so observant. So here's sort of the nuts and bolts of grant writing. I see Lisa is asking foundations. I don't know if they'll list the individual artists on GuideStar 990. They could or could not, depending on the dollar amount. Usually any gifts over $5,000, they have to list, but they also have public copies and non-public copies where information can be redacted because it's to protect people's home addresses. So I did that boo-boo. I was like, ooh, here, non-public copy. And I was like, oh my God, I had the list of all these donors and people's names on it with their home addresses. And I was like, oh my God, I messed up. So it can always be requested, but a lot of times you can request from the foundation. You can give them a call and say, hey, I'm interested in applying as an individual. I see that you've funded individuals in the past. Can you tell me the range in which you've funded? Because I want to be realistic in the amount that I ask for. And I think program managers, at least when I was a program manager, I appreciate when people give me a call. So you can always ask if you can't find it on 990. And it's also just a good excuse to call the funder. So basic components of a grant proposal, I always say pretend like you're submitting a job application, right? It's kind of like, oh, if I was applying to be a waitress at Cheesecake Factory, which I did when I was at CalArts. I worked at the Cheesecake Factory in Sherman Oaks. But when I applied, I looked up Cheesecake Factory and I was like, oh, what kind of culture do they have? And I did the same things, right? If I was researching a funder, am I a good fit? Do I want to work there? What's the drive like? I start researching them. And then I go, oh yeah, this sounds good. Let me apply. So then I submit my cover letter. And I've done that boo-boo before where I've just sent like a blind proposal and like there was no cover letter and looked totally unprofesh. and we do not want to look unprofessional. We want to make like a nice cover letter. Maybe it's on your letterhead, or you put your logo, or you're all artists. You're going to make it look all pretty. You're going to sign, address it to somebody, or like look for a board member or whoever is the program manager, sign it with your wet signature, whatever. Make a nice cover letter saying, "Dear program manager, what's your face," or whatever. And so excited I'm honored or humbled to submit this letter of intent or this request for proposal for the XYZ program. With little highlight about you. I look forward to hearing back from you soon. Blah, blah, blah. Write your name. So you want to have a nice cover letter. It's like a little bow on top of your package. And then your basic information, they will usually, a lot of times now, your applications are going to be online in their portal. There are some old school people who still only submit like paper copies, PDFs. You just have to be prepared for all kinds of things. But basic information in a grant proposal or LOI is going to be, they're going to want your contact info. So maybe it's going to be somebody, it's you yourself or your grant writer for your organization. It needs to be somebody who checks your email and your content, like a reliable like responder, right? And then you state your mission, vision, values. Maybe it's your artist statement, your programs, your projects, your history. And then it's going to have your proposal narrative. And it could be all kinds of questions. I'll show you a few examples of questions, typical questions funders ask for. And then they're going to want to see your budget with the request amount. This is why it's important for you to do your homework ahead of time. Remember, we're not going to ask for 50K if they are only giving 1 to 5,000, right? Like they're going to be like, trash, not even looking at it. You have no attention to detail. Why should I give you money? You're asking me for 50,000 is like the whole entire budget we have to give away. So trash. And if you don't know, call and ask, call and ask, call and ask, email and ask. There's no excuse. So they're going to want to see a budget with the request amount. And maybe they might ask you to include other sources of funding, both earned and contributed. So you can show, I'm going to sell tickets. That's earned revenue. I'm going to sell like, maybe you have like special coasters or something, or you've got like swag, like merchandise, or you sell popcorn or whatever you do. I don't know, concessions, like you're earning money, right? You're doing something, like you're hustling, your hustle money, right? And then you show like ticket sales. We project we're going to sell 50 tickets at $10 each. That's $500. We have concessions. We estimate we're going to sell wine and beer at like whatever, $200. We also project that one donor has pledged to me a $10,000 gift. So you can put pledged or committed $10,000. We estimate we're going to raise $5,000 through an online fundraiser or something like that. And we estimate that we would receive this grant from XYZ funder because we've applied for it and gotten it in the past. So you can start to show like, we're not just relying on you, Parker Foundation, to give me the whole $50,000 or whatever. I want to ask Parker Foundation, say your project's $50,000, you would ask Parker Foundation for maybe 25. I always go a little bit high, of what you think you're going to get. This is like the art of negotiation. Go a little bit high. Maybe you really want 20. I would go 25 and then start to say, here is how I would get the other 25K: ticket sales, a gala, art sales, concession sales, blah, 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 blah. And I'll show you a little a budget, a sample budget that's a template. Let's see. Okay. So here is sort of like a sample project budget. And sometimes funders are like, use our template, or they're like, just upload a budget. A lot of times they're like, upload a budget. We don't care. Usually it's an Excel, or upload a budget and fill in our little things on our portal. And they have like predetermined categories. So you have to just like plug it into the portal. At any rate, I always take all their questions in their portal, I put it into a Word document first, and I write my grant in my Word document, and then I transfer that information into the portal. Because a lot of times those portals are not nice and they crash on you. They don't save your work. They just like could be finicky. So I write my proposals and my budgets in Excel or Word first, and then I transfer it and upload it into the portal. So here's sort of an example of like, I worked with senior citizens one time, and they had this cute little Broadway baby show. And so I'm showing income right here at the top, right? Income, this is earned income, ticket sales, concessions. And then I have contributed reps, San Diego Foundation grant, sponsorship, production fees. You can break it up into earned and contributed if you want. I didn't do it here, maybe because I was lazy or it was a long time ago and I was brand new at grant writing. But I'm already saying I project $112,500 of income. I project. This is like the best guess estimate. And I show, how did I come up with this 60K in ticket sales? And what I do is I look back at like 3 years of history. How many shows are we going to do? How many ticket sales? What's our average? You don't just make up numbers. You look at history, or you look at what do you think is realistic? Don't like over project or under project. Try to just be conservative at first. And then I look at the production fees. We charged people to be in the show. Each of the cast members paid $100, and that's helped to cover the theater venue, the costumes, the rights, all that stuff. And then I put in all the expenses, facility rental, ASCAP fees, whatever, graphic designer, costume manager, seamstress, blah, 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 blah. These right here are called direct program expenses. Direct meaning they directly relate to that Broadway's Babies project. They directly relate to Broadway's Baby. Indirect means we have to do this no matter if we do Broadway's Babies or not. Like, we need to pay insurance whether we do Broadway Babies or not. We fundraise and pay our office whether we do Broadway Babies or not. But since we are doing Broadway Babies is hogging some of this indirect stuff. So we're going to allocate part of this indirect, non-sexy stuff, general operating, they're all synonymous, and say Broadway Babies is hogging about $8,000 worth of our office rehearsal and space. So we're going to charge Broadway Babies $8,000. Broadway Babies is hogging $2,500 of our fundraising expenses. So we're going to charge Broadway Babies this much. Remember, I told you that sometimes funders don't like this. They will not let you include indirect expenses. And I don't know why, because you need internet, you need insurance, you need a box office to collect ticket fees. Like, well, okay. So then I go to the Parker Foundation and I ask Parker Foundation to pay for this. But if they let you include indirect costs up to 10%, this is roughly a little bit over 10%, or they don't care, I put it in there. So now I see this total project cost me $112,000, right? And that this is a zero balance budget right now. A lot of times they're not going to be zero balance. This is just like a projection. This is my crystal ball. Projections are different from actuals. So once I actualize my income and my expenses, I start to put them in here, because that's good. I'm going to have to show to the funder, if this funder, the San Diego Foundation, gave me that $20,000, they're going to go, Anjanette, what'd you spend that $20,000 on? I'd be like, oh, I spent 12 grand on the facility rental. And then I spent, 2,000 on this to equal $20,000. So sometimes funders are like, show us what you'd spend the $20,000 on, and that would be a separate budget. So there's lots of ways you can do the budget. That's just like a quick and dirty way to show one. So that will be included in your grant proposal. Actually, I think on top of like maybe your attachments, like your artistic samples and stuff like that, your budget is one of the most important things in the proposal, because your budget tells a story about your fiduciary capacity to manage the grant. So Look at your, have somebody else, an outside point of view, look at your budget and make sure it makes sense. All right, almost there. Almost there. Okay, so we talked about pretending like you're submitting a job application. Okay, here's what I talked about, the artistic attachments. Think of this as your portfolio. You know, like if you're graduating, like what would you do as your senior thesis? If you're an MFA, what are you doing for your thesis? This is your best work synthesized. So if you're a dancer or choreographer and you have your MFA thesis and you're like, I'm going to upload the whole entire 1 hour show as an attachment, do not do that. Do not do that. Because guess what? Remember I told you I spent time at the California Arts Council and we were reading 100, no joke, 100 proposals. And these proposals can be like 20 pages long. And then we have to look at all your attachments too, your budgets and your artistic attachments. I do not have time to watch a whole entire hour-long concert. So pretend it's a commercial and you've got 30 seconds to 2 minutes to show me who you are as an artist. And to show me who you are as an artist matches your narrative of what you say you're going to do. So if you say we uplift voices of color, BIPOC communities, and we do site-specific work and work with multi-generational audiences, and we incorporate spoken word and graffiti art or whatever, I better see something that like shows. I'm not going to see just a concert ballerina on stage. That just doesn't match. Because I'd be like, bullshit. I mean, forgive me, but I would be like, wait, I see a bun head on a concert stage, but their narrative told me they do all this graffiti art and spoken word and like work with dancers of color, and then their attachments show nothing of that. And then I go like this, I go boo, and then I start to downgrade the proposal because I think you're kind of BSing it, right? People can read through the lines. Trust me. And you want to keep it tight and succinct. I remember somebody said, can I submit my whole like 65-page poetry thing? And I was like, no, like I want to see just like an excerpt. Either like you voice record it or you like write it, do a little zine or something, or like just remember, they only have like 2 minutes to judge you. I know it sounds awful, but like they've, it's kind of like The Voice, or like you think about like American Idol or America's Got Talent. They're not going on for 45 minutes. They're like got 30 seconds, so you have to think about it like that. What I like to see is like a little, sometimes they only like just put 2 attachments. You're like, that's it. I have so many things. Or like just do 2, a video can do 2 videos and then like 1 PDF attachment. So in that PDF attachment, I'm like, okay, I'm going to put some photos. I'm going to put some press releases. If I got like good reviews on something, and they should be recent. This should not be from 1998, because then you look like totally old school or like irrelevant. I'm like, haven't they not worked since 1998? Like, let's see some like recent stuff, maybe in the last 3 years. So keep it succinct and relevant. And tight, super, super tight. Remember, like these people, they get fatigued, looking at like, you've got to stand out. Other possible organizational attachments they might ask you to include are your staff and board bios. Like a lot of people are looking at diversity right now on boards. So if you have a 501c3 and like your board and staff, especially your leadership, is all white, I don't know why. Like we are like the most diverse place on earth. And a lot of people are looking at racial equity right now. A lot of funders are looking at their funding through that lens, sort of, I guess, trending, for lack of a better term. And they're looking at your board, if there's diversification, not in just racial equity, but like gender, sexual orientation, geographic, social, economic, education. So you want to make sure that your board isn't all just like old white dudes, right? You want to make sure that they're upper class white people, but you want to make sure that it's diverse and that your board is committed to the mission of your organization. Some funders are going to ask, what percent of your board gives? And they are asking, does your board fundraise? Because that is a big part of the board. Are they fundraising to ensure the mission of the organization is sustainable and is carrying through to its commitment to the community? If your board is not fundraising or, giving money themselves, that's a big red flag. And a lot of corporate organizations, this is why I hate their applications. They ask you for percentages. And you should say 100%. Even if you have 5 board members and each board member gave $5, I can in earnest say 100% of my board gave, even if it's $5, right? And maybe if you have a minimum, like, hey, if you're going to be on my board, I expect you to raise $500 to $1,000 per year. You could either raise it or you can give it, or you can do both. But you need to be financially contributing to the organization. And if you're not, I'm sorry, it's probably not a good fit, because we really do need to be all hands on deck and all working together to serve the community. Another thing that corporate funders ask for on applications is percent of like their gender, their race or ethnicity. It's really bizarre. They will say like, what percent of your board is African-American? What percent is your, percent is Asian American? What percent identifies? It's really bizarre, but you have to put in some numbers. Like, it's like the thing, you got to put it in there. And then you've got to attach either your project and or organizational budget. Sometimes they just ask for your project. Sometimes they ask for project and organizational. They'll ask for a profit and loss statement, balance sheet, income statement. I'll show you something that I just submitted literally yesterday, because I am a small business. And some of you who are small businesses, either a sole prop, a sole proprietor, as like your, Susie Q, the artist, like I'm Anjanette Maraya-Ramey, the artist, and I have a sole prop. I am a small business that is struggling right now, struggling during COVID. And the county of San Diego is actually giving funds to struggling business sole props like me. Hey. So I actually submitted a grant last night to the county, and they wanted a profit and loss statement just for January and February 2020. And so I gave them something that looks like this. And they said it can be internally prepared. So I was like, okay, they don't have a template, they don't have anything. So I am just going to put it in a simple Excel spreadsheet. So this is what my, God, I can't see, my little tiny, don't judge me because I don't make a lot of money, a profit and loss or income statement looks like. So I would do this by month. They just want to see 2 months. So I put my income consulting, my dance class teaching. I put how much I made in January, put how much I made in February, and here's my total income. Then I look at my expenses, my office rent, internet, all the non-sexy things that I pay for my business. And then here's my expenses total, and then my net profit. That's all they wanted. Super, super simple, easy peasy, right? So I submitted that with my application to the county, and this was for small businesses. So it's a grant. It's County Care's grant. And that's all they needed was this, and then they needed my business license. So I was pretty good to go. And I was really happy because it was like 2 paragraphs. It was really simple. What took me most time was like getting all the financials together. All right. So sometimes if you are a nonprofit organization, you will have to submit your 990 tax forms and your 501c IRS determination letter so that you can prove that you are a legit nonprofit. And with government, they're also like, oh, and can you give me that you're active on sam.gov and that you're active on the Attorney General, that you're active on the Secretary of State. So this is why I hate government grants. They're always like, and they want you to attach all these other things. Some quick tips and tricks. Pay close attention to deadlines. I always, like, especially when I work with a team, I totally lie. Like when I work with these executive directors and I'm the grant writer and they're like, when's that due? And if it's due on the 14th, I'm like, oh, it's due on the 12th, because I know they're going to wait till the 14th. And then I'm like, oh, I'm up till midnight trying to like scrape and like get it uploaded. And I hate that. It just, for grant writers, it's just like a nightmare. So I always give myself 48 hours. I put my deadline at least 48 hours before the actual deadline, because I could still be asking people or like pulling my work samples, getting the budgets, getting like, it's like a scavenger hunt. You're like, oh my God, where's my budget? Where's my work samples? Where's my board list? Where's my this? Where's my this? And it's like, oh my God. So like, I always give myself 2 days. And then when you get into the grant portal, sometimes it's not user friendly or like crashes every other 5 minutes. And you're like, okay, at least I have time to not like stress about it. And I can submit it on time. Like I said, always write it in a Word document first and then upload it into the grant portal. A lot of people don't want you to go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So they put character counts with or without spaces, and some of them are annoying. So this is also another reason why I put it in Word document first, because like, for example, I wrote, this is a corporate grant I wrote. See how they only give me 150 words. God, I was like, gosh, they're so stingy. Like, they're so greedy, man. They don't give me a lot. This is really hard. Because, when you talk about yourself, you're just like, oh my God, I'm so great. I'm so great. My organizations are great. And you just can go on for like 3,000 words. But no, and so this is why I put it in Word, because you have to count. And sometimes they do only characters, like 2,500 characters. I'm like, that's a lot. No, it's not. So when they say describe specific purposes for which your grant funds will be used, and then you write blah, 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 blah. I look down here and I go, oh my God, how many words was that? And I look, oh, it's 147. I made it. Woo, by 3 words. I barely had 3 words, and you just have to keep going. And to me, this is the part that takes a long time. This is why I give myself 2 days. So I have it already like drafted. Now I can just go clean and finesse and make sure I didn't go over words or go over characters. Like, here are my goals. I also like to use bullet points, so it's not all like just chunky narratives and like your grant panelists are like, oh my God, so many paragraphs. I'm just reading paragraph after paragraph. Like, can you break that up, please? And like, give me some bullets or some headers or something, just like, so I'm just not reading chunky paragraph to chunky paragraph. And then see how I was telling you how demographics, like, oh my God, they're asking me like, who do I serve? How old are they? What percent is that? And blah, blah, blah. And so this is why, again, I put it in the Word doc, because they only want me to say what I need to say in 150 words or 2,500 characters. And if you are using Microsoft Word, you can always like click right here and it tells you words, character, no spaces, character with spaces. So like, always double check it. And I always put like right here next to it, like the allotment, 150 words. And then I put how many I are. Because if I'm co-writing with somebody, I send it to them and then they just start typing away. Like, we have free real estate on words. I'm like, stop adding. We reached our maximum limit. Stop adding. Don't you see we're at 143? You just added 25 words. Now I got to go back and like cut again. So like, this is why I do this, so that other people know, like, we're reaching capacity, like time out. So this is sort of how I've written before. And also, like, I put my schedule. See how this is how they wanted our project. I had to fill it in their little portal. So I couldn't do my cute little spreadsheet. I had to do it like this. Provide a budget. And they told me to do it like this. So I had to fill in their little things. And then see how they ask for other project funding. Like, who else is funding this? Oh, these people, we got my 30 grand from, and this person, rich lady at the Jewish Community Foundation. Remember I told you the bank. So this is a rich person at this community foundation, pledged us 15,000. We received that. And then see how we received. And these are put as pending meaning we applied or we're going to get ready to do it, but we didn't get it yet, So yeah, this is just an example of a full-on proposal. Am I boring you yet? I know, it's just so much stuff. Almost there, I promise. I only have 2 more slides. Okay, so I showed you a sample proposal of an organization. I'm going to show you a sample report of what I just did, literally, and I hope all of you guys at the end of this presentation, go to Cal Humanities if you're in California and go look at those quick grants as an individual and the sample report. It's super, it's only 2 questions. You should just get the money. So here's what I did for Cal Humanities for the individual grant. Literally took me 2 hours. 3 questions. Describe your work in the public humanities in the 2 years prior to COVID. So this is where you just get to go off on yourself. You're just like, I'm so great, I'm the bomb, blah, 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 la, 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 right? You just write there. And look, they only did 250 words, but I got it down to 225. Just because you have 250 words doesn't mean you have to use it all. Just be super strategic with your real estate. Statement of need. How has COVID impacted your work in public? Did you lose your job? Did you get, did your gigs get canceled or whatever? Could you not do your dance film because you can't, whatever, your dancers got COVID or something like that. So you just wrote that. Then outcomes. How's this money going to serve you? Or better the community, or mostly when they ask about outcomes, they want to know about impact. So what? I gave you $5,000. You're like, well, I did this photography exhibit. I go, yeah, so what? How did that help inform the community? How did it educate the community? How did it increase people's propensity to want to learn more about maybe your photography exhibits about the Japanese internment? Did it help increase knowledge about historical civil rights movements? Did it inform people about a part in history that we didn't know of before? Not just, oh, it's my cool ass art. Not a good outcome for me or for funders. So you've got to demonstrate what impact it has. And then they just want your W-9. It's basically a form that you can fill out online, and it just has your social security number because that's how they're going to pay you. So that is an individual grant. Again, I wrote this in Word. I double checked everything before I uploaded it into the portal, and their portal's pretty easy. You just have to create a, a username and password, and then you're in like gold. Okay, sorry, my little share screen is weird. And then a lot of times when they're like, okay, so easy, I gave them my W-9, I gave them my routing account number, I got $2,000 the following week. And I was like, whew, okay, awesome. I can live for a month or 2. That's great, And then they say, well, you have to use this within 6 months. That's another thing you have to pay attention to, is when do you have to exhaust that money? And they say you need to use it between June 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. So I got 6 months to use $2,000, which I blew in a month, but I can't be like, oh, can you pay for my rent that was due in March? No, that did not fall in the grant period, Anjanette. You did a big no. Show me what you did within this grant period of 6 months and report what you did. What did our 2,000 do in this 6 months time period? So then I report back, and they give me a report template, and it's in their portal. And my report, again, super, super simple. This is why I love them. Looks like this. What did you do? between June 1st and whatever, right? November 30th. That was actually their grant period. And then my final report was due December 3rd. I've already done it, obvi, right? Obvi, because I already completed it December 20th. And so then I tell them what I did. This afforded me to do this, social distance stuff, and then you sign it. And then what I do is I'm still a little old school, so I paper copy it and I save it electronically. Because if your hard drive crashes or your cloud is like, I don't know, whatever, I always like to have my paper. It's happened to me before where I've lost things and like they're lost in the ether. And I'm like, I got my good paper here still. So you still have your paper copy and they can say something like, hey, Anjanette, we never got your grant report. I'm like, it's right here. So I always save my confirmations. Like when you submit, like the best feeling in the world is when you hit submit and then they give you a confirmation that says, thank you for submitting. We received your thing, your grant submission or your grant report. See, it says right here, completed December 2nd. So I know I submitted before their final report right there. So like I can now sleep in peace knowing that I did that. And a lot of times I put in my Google Calendar all the deadlines and you can color coded, or if you have a passion planner or paper count, whatever you need to do to keep all your deadlines straight. Because if you have like multiple grants going on at what time, you're just like, wait, when's the LOI due? When's the full proposal due? When are they going to let me know? When's the project deadlines? Like, when do I have to do the project? When is the final report due? So like, this ain't easy. You got to be super organized, super organized. And then lastly, I just wanted to show you like a sample, what did I send you? Oh, the sample grant agreement with Cal Humanities. So I went into an agreement with them. It was basically a contract. It was not it's a contract agreement, but it was a grant because they gave me the $2,000 up front. So I didn't have to wait for reimbursement or anything, but it's just basically saying, hey, Anjanette, you're great. You got $2,000 and here's what we said you're going to do. This is the grant period. And then you got to do all the stuff, read. What can you spend the money on? See, I can't just be like, oh, I want to renovate my bathroom. I need a new bathroom sink. No, you can't do that. You can't. Oh, I want to give scholarships. Oh, can't do that. I want to buy a keg. Oh, can't do that. Oh, darn, so you can't, there are some things you can't before you accept the money that you are saying, okay, I agree to these terms. And then you sign it and you send it back. So that's sort of like my agreement with Cal Humanities. So you've seen all of these. And then lastly, and one of the most important things is that you cannot thank your donors enough. I did a GoFundMe I still have a GoFundMe campaign going on right now because Mariah Performing Arts, my C corporation, is building our studio as we speak. And I thought the best way to do that and to get funds in quickly, because grants sometimes take a long time. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to get that grant and the money's going to be in my bank account in a month. A lot of times it don't work like that, especially with government. You've got to wait. First, you got to front the money. Then you got to ask for reimbursement. Then you have to wait 30, 60 days. So that can take months. And then some funders take their time. They're like, oh, we have to wait till our board meets, and we don't meet until like March. And then like 3 months later, the board meets. And then they're like, oh, we want to fund this, and this. And you're like, oh my God, it's too long. It's too long. So individuals are a great way to go. I know it's not a grant, but it's just an alternative. I actually prefer individuals because I have opportunity to make deeper relationships with folks. And I like to thank them, call them, DM them, whatever, text them. You can never thank them enough. You can keep in touch with them if you have like an email newsletter, like you use Constant Contact or MailChimp or whatever. You can occasionally send them, like maybe you're doing a sculpture and you're showing them progress work, like, ooh, I just got my clay, or I just got my spinny kiln, my wheel or whatever. Take a look. And then like you do a time lapse thing and just say, I can't wait for you to come to my final exhibition. It's on this date, but in the meantime, check out my progress so far. Your donation or your investment has allowed me to put this show up that informs people about the Japanese internment. You can social media. That's, you have to consider donors. If they're not on social media, which people aren't, then you're going to have to do email. You're going to have to do phone calls, like good old fashioned phone calls, like no Zooms. Because even my dad, he's immigrant Filipino. He's like, I don't know how to use the virtual. I don't know how to use the Zoom. So he can't use Zoom. So I have to do like a good old fashioned phone call. He can't even do FaceTime. So I'm like literally dialing my dad. And then, you could do social distance coffee if it's safe in your area, invite them to your shows virtually or whatever it is. But you've got to keep in touch with people and let them know, demonstrate the impact of their investment. They're investing in you, your organization, your impact. They're investing in your impact. I always say impact equals income. Impact equals income. Right? Your art needs to be like badass and like make people feel emotions, make people think critically about the world we live in, educate, inform, ignite emotion. It's got to be badass. It's got to do something. You have to be able to articulate why your art is badass and why it deserves investment, because it creates impact. Right? That's what I love about CalArts. It's like, I always see like a CalArts show. I go to Red Cat, it's been like over 20 years and I'll go, oh my God, I got all the feels, right? I get all the feels just getting like the newsletters. I'm like, I don't even know what it's about, but like something about it just makes me happy. I have joy about it. And then I read more about the process and I feel like so engaged. So you've got to make your art do that. And you have to be able to articulate it sometimes, even if it's a video message, or other people's testimonials about you, or press critics testimonials or reviews about you. Other people can say maybe what you aren't able to say. So hit them up. And then you always want to make sure that you send your donors, funders, grantors, foundations, whatever, an acknowledgement letter. So you'll send them. Mail is kind of hard right now because like people aren't at their offices and not checking mail. But at Maraya Performing Arts, we have cute letterhead and like cute matching envelopes. I'm really prideful of that. And then we have cute matching stamps, the love stamps with the hearts. So I like to send a good old fashioned letter, like we're pen pals, and get the donor's name and address, put the date on it and the dollar amount they funded. So you can write, Dear Julie Fry at Cal Humanities, thank you so much for your $2,000 gift to fund Maraya Performing Arts, blah, 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 to help us get through these very uncertain times of COVID. Your investment of $2,000 have enabled us to continue our humanities projects concerning racial equity and the Black Lives Matter movement. We've done this, and that with your gift and blah, 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 blah. We hope you can come see the final finished project virtually at this and this and this. Here's some flyers or whatever. And then at the bottom, you can write, this is for nonprofits or if you're fiscally sponsored, no goods or services were received in exchange for the donation. Because if you're like, thanks for the $2,000, here's my painting for $2,000, it's like, it's really not a donation because you've exchanged a service or a tangible item for $2,000. So basically there's about $2,000 piece of art from you. So it's not really a donation. So you always put no goods or services. They just gave it to you in good faith. This donation is tax deductible to the extent of the law. And then you put tax ID number, blah, 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 blah. And now that donor, individual donor, or that funder, or whatever, will have record like, okay, they received the money, they've cashed the check. And government funders, you don't really do this with. I used to get those. I thought it was so sweet, but we do contracts and I'm like, oh, it's just like, it's very transactional in a way. Just show me the receipts, we'll pay you the money. But and occasionally as a government funder, I would get these nice thank you letters and then invitations to their shows and whatever. It was really sweet. And then you want to acknowledge your donors in so many ways. You're all artists, right? So maybe you have your own website, maybe you have your show programs or roll credits at your film or your documentaries, or at your exhibition, you have like a donor wall, or you have, you know, little flyers that you hand out at your exhibition, or you put them on your virtual screen or whatever. There could be other places like if you have a storefront, like a gallery or studio or dance studio, that you would put them, maybe you name a building after them or something like that, or a XYZ dance studio, Claire Rose Foundation dance studio, Parker Foundation, you know, theater, music studio, or whatever like that. So there's lots of ways you can thank these donors and steward them. Steward, I don't mean like stew a pot, but like kind of, right? Because you want that next stewardship thing to lead to the next gift. Like, have you ever had like given something to somebody and they never said thank you, and you're like sort of butthurt about it? You're like, wow, I was so generous and they didn't say thank you. You know, that's like that probably how donors would feel. They didn't acknowledge me on their website or the program. And that has happened to me. And I was a little, you know, I gave in-kind donation, was worth about $2,000. That is a lot of money for me as a fledgling organization. But all I asked for in return was, can you please acknowledge me on your website and in your program? And they did not do it. And I will never give to that organization again. Never. I didn't even get a tax ID letter. So at the end of the mail, I could not claim it on my taxes. They were just pretty negligent in their stewardship with me. So I don't want to give to them anymore. So I don't want that to happen to y'all. So I want to make sure that this is part of whatever fundraising process you have in place, whether that be through grants, GoFundMe, annual campaigns, individual giving. Make sure you thank people, and you can, there's no excuse. It's so easy to communicate with people nowadays. There's just so many avenues. There's just really no excuse. And thank them multiple times. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. I know that's like a ton of information. Again, this is broad brushstrokes. I'll be teaching in the winter session, and we'll be able to, like, whoever's enrolled in that, so maybe you can enroll if you're not enrolled yet. I'll be teaching 2 weeks in the winter session, and we'll dive deeper into all these nuts and bolts. And I'll be helping whoever's enrolled in the class write their own grant proposal. And I'll be spending a little bit more individualized time, because everybody's stories, situation, funding avenues are so different. It's really like, this is the best I can do with, like, I don't know who you all are, and I don't know where you live, and if you're individuals, nonprofits, sole profs, or whatever. So this is just like, let me just vomit everything out and hope something resonates with you. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Carolyn to help me navigate the questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely. We will send an email out to the community for the talk. We don't have the registration mechanism set up yet, so we're going to be working on that in the next week or so. But when we do, I'm sorry, for the winter intersession, when we get the registration set up, we will be sending it out. So please be on the lookout. It is limited space. For alums, we only have 10 spots available. So it's very limited. So sign up right away when you see it. And with that, thank you so much, Anjanette. I really appreciate you sharing all of your info. Does anybody have any questions? You can either unmute yourself and ask your questions directly, or you can put them in the chat. We have one from Teresa. The question is, can you give examples of how many grants an organization apply for versus receives in the course of a year? And she put in parentheses, maybe qualified by size.
Oh, okay. So it depends on the funder. I can tell you for City of San Diego, we would have, it depends on the size, it depends on the budget too, allocation. So this is why if you're civically engaged, I would recommend you go to like your elected officials in whatever municipality you are and look at or ask for at the Arts Commission, how much money do you have? Do you have 5 million? Like for when I worked at the Arts Commission, we had 15 million. Then it went down to 10. Then it went this year because of COVID went down to 5 million. And we funded 150 arts nonprofits. And we had two different programs. We had one that was organizational support and one that was project support. A lot of times the commissioners who are appointed, they're like the board, they're appointed by the elected officials. The commissioners decide how much of that 5 million, 15 million, the pot, I always call it the pot, how much of the pot they want to allocate to each program. And a lot of times the commissioners thought, let's fund more to the general operating support because there's not a lot of funders who do that. So let's just be the cool people and do that. So at times we've funded 10 million to that program and maybe 2 or 3 million to the project program. And then a lot of the large budget size organizations, which I think is just so inequitable. And I have been hustling a lot to advocate for equity. And I know a lot of government funders and private foundation funders are moving towards equity because a lot of the larger size organizations, like our institutional organizations, flagship organizations, like our theater companies, symphonies, operas with these multi-million-dollar organizations, we're receiving things like $500,000, $400,000, $300,000. And they're 10 out of 90 would get half the pot. And it was egregious to me. You can always look at your funders and see who applied, who got funded, who did not get funded, especially if they're a government agency. I used to stalk and go like, okay, who received the most amount of money? I want to see their proposals because this is all public. This is public funding. This is our taxpayer dollars paying for this. So it's an open book. I can say, I want to see, oh, let's say San Diego Symphony got 500 grand. Can I see their proposal, please? Oh, and you funded 10 organizations, all of them multi-million dollars, and they all, between the 10, they got 5 million. What's up with that? You know, so a lot of times they have this algorithm, and algorithms are starting, it's like Facebook has an algorithm. You're like, oh, how did you like my post? You know, like, how did you like, you know, dump my post or keep my post? What's your rationale behind it? And a lot of times I don't feel personally that it's always super transparent or clear in government. They kind of like go, oh, we take this percent and this, and then I say they funnel it through a magic calculator, and the magic calculator just spits out a dollar amount. And a lot of times people have no idea how that came to be. And it's a lot of things that start with how much is the budget, how many people applied, what's those people's budget who applied, and how much can we actually allocate, and what proposals are graded the highest. Because I know LA Arts County, California Arts Council, City of San Diego, we did it on a 4-3-2-1. It's like high pass, low pass, no pass. Do you guys still do that? I don't know. It's kind of like that, you know, like this proposal is a high pass. This is the best ever. Okay, so they're going to get first priority of getting funded, all the high passes. Okay, let's see how much we can fund all the high passes. Okay, do we have more left over? Okay, we have more left over. Let's now go fund the low passes. Or do we have more? Okay, let's now fund the, you know, passes or low passes. So the 4-3-2-1, and then they just keep going until they exhaust all the money in the pot. So it just, again, it depends. Sorry, I hope that answers your question.
Let me unmute myself before I start talking. Anjanette, this question is from Stephanie, and she says, Anjanette, what about emergency grants and stewardship and the tax ID in a thank you note?
Emergency grants. So I received 2 emergency grants. One was from a fund, and you all should look that up. I should have put it in the chat. It's called United States Artist Relief I got 5,000. I was like, "Whoa! Oh my gosh, this is awesome." And it was really a conglomerate of major funders. I don't know who they are, but it was another like sort of VIP membership, rich people coming together and like pulling their funds together to fund individual artists who were impacted by COVID. Yeah, it took I'm sorry, Jorge. Yes, you just got to keep trying. You're not going to get it all. You know, Jorge was saying that they applied for 7 times and then you finally get the 5K. But once you get it, you can't apply anymore. You can't just keep repeating. So yeah, I would say I thank whoever sent me the email, because they don't have like a website where you're just like, let me call the program manager real quick. I just say, and they actually say in their response back, we don't want all the accolades or whatever, like there's no need to like send us anything. I just sent an email and said, please extend my thank you to the conglomerate of funders who helped make this, you know, easier transition through me for COVID. So I wrote in an email, and that you just need to be an individual. There's no letter needed or anything. They said, don't even like bother with it, but I do acknowledge them on my website. And then I did acknowledge them on our social media, even though they're like, don't give us like the parade and the like the fanfare. We don't want all of that. But I just did make sure, because they do send you an email saying, congrats, we rewarded you $5,000. And then I did thank you like that. Yeah. And Jorge too, send a thank you email. And Jorge, if you have a website or your next program or whatever, you can acknowledge them acknowledge them. Next question.
Okay, so the next question, this one is from Jennifer, and it's any other tips for funding searchable lists of funders that are free or cheap?
GuideStar. Go to GuideStar. You can go to the foundation directory online. I don't know, I think it's like $50 a month. So that would not be my first. My first research would be go to your local community foundation. I don't know what city you are in, Jennifer. Maybe you can type it in the chat. But remember all those grant maker or North Carolina. So you can go to like North Carolina grant makers, Google that. You can go to, you know, any of your city or county arts and culture commissions. I don't know if you all have one, like most cities. I used to be part of like grant makers in the arts, GIA. I would even look at grant makers in the arts, grant makers in the arts. I think it's GIA.gov or whatever. But they usually list all their members too, and they will have their members, and you can go to town on whoever's in your city. But most municipalities, if you have a major municipality, they should have like a cultural affairs office or sometimes they put them under Parks and Rec or something ridiculous like that, or economic development. I know in Seattle, they hide them sort of under the civic engagement or racial equity office or something like that. So you just gotta have to search there. And then those people usually get on their mailing news list, and then they'll recommend funders to you, and or go to your local community foundation. Because remember the community foundation, like the Zuckerbergs went to the Palo Alto Foundation, and those foundations might list all their donor advised funds. So you just have to keep going down the rabbit hole. But those are just some, it's much more rural there. Your state, I know California likes to fund rural. So look at your state and see if there are funds, or even the NEA. Look through the NEA, because that's a national endowment for the arts. That will have funding for rural as well. If not, at least sign up for their newsletter and get pinged when they have other opportunities that you might be eligible for. Yeah, our town, NEA, our town grants.
All right, so I have another question from Lisa. Can you give us some more tips to do and not to do when applying for individual artist grants from CAC? I don't remember what the acronym stands for.
California Arts Council. Well, this is the first time they're actually doing it. I know, I used to be the executive director for the Aja project, and we had artists or photographers and videographers that were on staff. So our staff would say, can I apply for the local impact grant that needs artists? So artists under Aja Project, the nonprofit, would write the grant, and Aja would just kind of go, okay, we'll just sign off on it for you. So individuals, I would recommend, if you can hook up to a nonprofit, if you work for a nonprofit and you are the artist on record, I think that's a good way to go, because your budget will look more robust and your capacity will look more robust. If you can't go in with a nonprofit or a fiscal agent, I would recommend that you your narrative is tight and succinct, and that your artist attachments are the best thing in the world. And it should just look really, really super, just dope, like amazing. And that your budget makes sense. I always recommend that you have an objective person that doesn't really know you read your grant proposal. Because don't ask your mom, because they're just, oh my God, honey, it's so good. You know, like, don't ask your partner because, oh, it's great, you're the best. Like, they know your work and they know you too well. So you've got to ask like your banker or your accountant or something. I don't know, somebody who doesn't really know you or your art, because you think about the people reading your proposal, they do not know you. So it's like you're auditioning or you are applying for a job. So make it look like you are, everything's perfect. You know, it's spell checked, it's grammar checked, it's proofread, it's clean, like all your attachments work, there are no broken links to anything. That's what I would recommend.
You all were a little bit over, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much once again, Anjanette, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your afternoon.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.